Over the course of the past 3 seasons, we've seen the majority of the Miraculouses distributed out to various different characters, with a variety of different powers and weapons bestowed upon the users. But over time, I found myself wondering which Miraculous is actually the most useful. Since they all have different powers, they all have different strengths and weaknesses, but which Miraculous would be the most useful at fighting evil for the average person? In essence, if I had to choose a completely random Miraculous to give to someone without knowing anything about them, which Miraculous would give them the best chance of success fighting a villain? So, as our baseline, we know that every Miraculous gives you super strength, agility, and speed, so we can disregard those power-ups and focus on the other attributes the Miraculous gives out. And a brief disclaimer, I'm not saying these Miraculouses are bad, just less useful for the average person. So, let's start with the least useful category, in order. Of all the Miraculouses we've seen, I think by far the worst is the monkey. For its positive, it gives you a staff, which is useful because it's a big sturdy weapon, but where it goes wrong is its power. Uproar creates a toy-like item which you can throw at someone to make their powers malfunction. Now there's a number of problems I see here. 1, this power is only useful against one opponent. 2, it makes their powers weaken. It doesn't actually defeat them or immobilize them, so you actually still have to beat them up afterwards. And 3, if you miss your shot, it's over. Next up we have the mouse. For a weapon, you get a skipping rope, which is just a not as good version of Ladybug's yo-yo or Queen Bee's spinning top because it doesn't have a weapon attached at the end. And the power is multitude, which lets you shrink down and multiply. Honestly, I know it's been useful before, but that was when Marinette, the greatest of all time Miraculous wielder, used it whilst also using a number of other Miraculouses at the same time. In an actual battle against a villain with no help or other power-ups, I think its value is pretty minimal. Next up we have the Snake Miraculous, and I can already hear people getting mad about this one, but I think it's pretty clear-cut. For starters, the weapon is a lyre. Not a magic lyre that has mystical powers, just a lyre. Its power is pretty cool though. Second Chance allows you to return to a specific point in time over and over again, but for a 5-minute duration, whilst allowing you to retain the knowledge you've already got. But this has a bunch of weaknesses. First, you need to be the type of person that can continually adjust their plan when it fails. We see that even characters like Adrien struggle with this, so it's not a great option for people that can't put the bigger picture together. 2, it could potentially drive you crazy. Just because your body's not getting tired doesn't mean your mind wouldn't be getting tired. Say I return to the past 5,000 times to try and beat a villain, over time that would affect my mental health. Also, it's completely useless for a long fight. Let's say, just before I battle a villain, I use the power-up. I get beaten a few times and I keep going back and adjusting my plan. I finally come up with the winning plan, but our fight goes longer than 5 minutes, and he kills me because I detransform. You just can't handle any sort of extended fight, which makes it difficult for the average person to use it effectively. It's very niche, and probably only works best when you have allies. Rounding out the least useful category is the Horse Miraculous. Once again, the weapon has pretty questionable value. It's just a giant horseshoe that you can throw around. Pretty basic, like the snake's lyre. Its power is also pretty niche. Voyage allows the user to open portals. That's it. Basically, it's only good for running away if the villain's beating you down, or you can attempt to trick the villain into going through one of your portals. I mean, theoretically, you could send them into space or under the ocean to be crushed by the pressure, or into the sky where they can fall to their death, or maybe even close the portal when they're halfway through and cut them in half. But only an idiot's gonna fall for something like that, and you'd probably need the help of another hero to make it work. All in all, I think it's the best of the less useful Miraculouses, but it still isn't great. Next up, we have the useful category. We'll start this off with the dragon. Now for starters, the weapon's a sword. You can't go wrong with a sword, and the superpower is pretty versatile. You can transform into water, wind, or lightning, which would make you useful against a variety of different opponents. To be honest, I think this one barely makes it into the good category, and it's mostly because of the sword. Up next, we have the fox. The fox, like a number of other Miraculouses, has a trash weapon, a flute. You're not going to win many fights wielding a flute, but what it lacks in offensive power, it makes up for with its special power, Mirage. Mirage allows the fox to create hyper-realistic illusions which can be really useful for tricking opponents, setting traps and ambushes, and manipulating enemies. For an example of how a true master would wield this power, see Mysterio vs Spider-Man in Far From Home. Ultimately though, the fox lacks the required firepower to actually take out powerful villains, and would be best used in conjunction with an ally who has a strong combat power, which leads into the perfect accompaniment for the fox, the cat. The cat's a pretty good all-rounder. It has a great weapon, a pole that can extend out, making it both powerful and a mobility item. Its power Cataclysm is also immensely powerful, and if you use it right, you can finish your fight in one fell swoop. You might be wondering why is one of the 2 major Miraculouses down so far on this list, and it's for a simple reason. It has the biggest potential for something to go wrong. You could miss and hit a building and destroy it, you could hit a bystander, you could accidentally hit yourself, and you're dead. A lot can go wrong if you don't know what you're doing, and that's why it's further up on the list. Then we come to the turtle, which is essentially the polar opposite of the cat. Where the cat is almost all offense, the turtle is all defense, which is a good thing for a new hero. You get a huge shield, which can be used Captain America style to block attacks or beat down on your enemies, and its special power, Shelter, creates an almost unbreakable shield which you can use to wear down your opponent. Now this is the Miraculous that can keep you the most safe while slowly whittling down your opponent. Whilst you're not going to be able to get the KO straight away, over time you're going to come out on top. And this brings us to the best of the useful Miraculouses, the Bee. At first glance, the Bee just looks like a not as good version of the Ladybug Miraculous, and yeah, it kind of is. It has the spinning top as a weapon, which you can use to bludgeon people at a distance or tie them up, or even just use it to swing around like Spider-Man. Its power is super useful too. Venom allows you to completely immobilize your opponent. Now, whilst this is a kind of one-hit wonder kind of thing, it completely takes someone out of the fight, and since the weapon's on a string, if you miss, you can try again, unlike different Miraculouses like the monkey. It might struggle to take on multiple opponents, but if you manage to hit one with Venom, you can use the spinning top like you'd use Ladybug's yo-yo and tie another enemy up. But beyond 2, and you might be in trouble, and that's what keeps it out of top contention. And now we arrive at the God tier. These are the Miraculouses you could give to anybody. Literally anybody. Briefly explain what they do, send them off, and they'll be able to kick some serious ass. We'll start this list off with the Ladybug Miraculous. Now, don't get me wrong, this one's powerful, but I don't think it's the most powerful. I think we as an audience get a skewed perception of things based on watching Marinette. It's shown time and time again that Marinette is the one who's powerful, not just because she has this powerful Miraculous. She uses it to great effect, but she also uses Adrien's to great effect and managed to use a bunch of others all at the same time. She's special. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk Miraculous powers. Now the weapon's pretty useful. The yo-yo, like the spinning top, can be used to bludgeon people, swing around, lasso people, tie them up, you get the idea. Its superpowers are also super useful. First up, we have Lucky Charm. Seriously, if you get into trouble when fighting a villain, you can just use Lucky Charm and it creates an item that can get you out of the situation, or defeat the villain outright, as well as the ability to visualize in your mind the exact sequence of events you need for it to work. Then, if you're fighting a corrupted villain, you can purge away their corruption using the yo-yo as well. Finally, after it's all said and done, you can repair all the damage caused by the battle as if it never happened. It's the perfect all-rounder. But there's still better ones. Just above the Ladybug, I'll put the Rabbit. The Rabbit, if the stars aligned correctly, could be unbeatable. You can use it to literally see every possible future, all the events of the past and present, spend a few days hiding in the burrow before emerging with the exact winning strategy to defeat the villain/villains. It has an umbrella that can be used as a weapon and a shield, which makes it a viable combat Miraculous. The only real downside being you have to be able to keep track of all the possible futures and make sure events play out to your advantage. And for things to play out the way you need them, you might have to rely on other people, as we see whenever Bunnix appears. So, whilst you have all the solutions at your fingertips, you still need to be able to put it into action, which is probably harder than it sounds. In the runner-up slot, we have the Peacock Miraculous. Whilst the weapon, the hand fan, is rather underwhelming, the ability to create senti-monsters is essentially a match winner straight out of the gate. Let's remember young Master Fu, when he was just Novice Fu, created a senti-monster that got so strong, it killed all the monks that guarded the Miraculouses. Literally all of the monks. Maybe none of them were able to get a Miraculous on in time, but I doubt it. Mayura later uses it to create a Ladybug so realistic that it actually betrays the villains. Feasibly, you'd be able to overpower any villain you come across with the right type of senti-monster. The only downside would be keeping it under control. And this brings us to the best of the best. There's no way you can lose to a villain if you use this Miraculous, whether you're a first-time user or a seasoned veteran, the Butterfly. We've actually already seen the best way to use it in the show, the Season 2 finale. Just use the Miraculous to power someone up whose sole power is to power you up. Then, you can power up the whole city at once and have your own little army. Checkmate, game, set, match. You get the idea. The best part is you can communicate with them all at once to tell them what to do, and you don't even have to fight yourself. And if you do have to fight, you have a massive cane to swing around. So, that's my ranking. At least until we see what the other powers are. So, let me know what you think, whether you agree or disagree. Who do you think is the most powerful?